It's incredibly frustrating to have a resistant hypnosis client. And I teach the students in my program that there's really no such thing as a client that is resistant to hypnosis. As hypnotists, we know things are symptoms. Resistance is a symptom of something else that needs to be addressed. There's another cause underneath. One of the reasons that I teach my students that there's no such thing as resistance is to reinforce upon them that they are empowered, they have the skills, and they have the tools. And maybe at first, uncovering the reason someone is not easily being guided into hypnosis takes a little bit of effort, but over time, it becomes easy. My name's Penny. I'm a board-certified hypnotist, a certified professional hypnosis instructor. I write for 2 industry journals, and I practice hypnosis in my anesthesia career before I left that anesthesia career to go full-time, helping people specifically with deep identity work, personal growth and transformation, which is full of emotion-driven patterns, habits, and behaviors. And this thing that people love to call resistance can come up often. And when you understand that you're not in a tug-of-war with a client and you're not fighting against their subconscious, there's not some thing that you have to overcome, it takes the pressure off of you. Now, I'm going to take you through the different things that can lead to resistance. And basically, if you watch this closely at the end and you're taking some notes, which I highly recommend that you do, you are going to have a checklist of the things that you can just mentally go through to make sure that you've addressed these things. Because one of the things that made anesthesia so safe in the 1980s is that they adopted the aviation industry's checklist for safety so that there is standardization. You will hear me speak often about presence, process, precision. And when you have a process and you understand the principles of hypnosis, then you can be precise in how you're approaching these things. So let's get into this idea of resistance. First of all, when someone is told that, oh, your client could be resistant, the suggestion is being planted that working with the client is going to be hard. What does that do for you? That's not helpful to you, because now you're going into it with expectations that it's not going to be easy, that you're going to feel challenged, that you might not have enough skills. And it just blows my mind how many excellent hypnosis trainers there are out there in the world, that we can get into the habit of being, and I say we because I slip up and I'm not above any of this, but I'm very intentional in my speech. And if I catch myself, I correct myself, because that's also good for you to know that, it's okay if you misspeak. Nobody in this is perfect. But it's amazing to me how many people are experts on the mind. We're experts on self-talk. We're experts on reframing. And in a moment of casual conversation, temporarily forget that students and other people we talk to are continually going in and out of suggestible states. Hypnosis, being suggestible, is dynamic. It's not static. And we inadvertently plant the suggestion that somebody's going to have resistant clients, and that's going to be difficult. So let's just get that off the table. If you have been through a hypnosis certification program, you have been given the tools to deal with this. You've probably just never seen it put together this way before. Now, depending on the depth of the training, you may have to go educate yourself on some of these things. So the first thing that will create a resistant hypnosis client is a lack of congruence. You hear people talking about matching and mirroring and pacing and all of these things. Throw those complex ideas out the window for just a moment. Because complexity creates confusion and simplicity leads to success. Simplicity does not mean that you're missing something. It means clarity. So lack of congruence. Congruence begins the moment someone hears about you. If you go through my social medias, if you go through my YouTube channel, you will see I am very casual. I don't teach in a jacket and a dress shirt. Sorry about that. I don't teach in a jacket and dress shirt. You go to my website, you don't see me wearing a dress suit or dress casual. This is who I am. And this is who I'm going to be when I show up with my clients. Sometimes my hair's in a ponytail, sometimes it's down, sometimes it's in a bun. Sometimes I'll wear dressy t-shirts with jewelry to dress it up, makeup to dress it up. This is who I am. So that is who I am on social media. So when people see me on social media, when they see me on my website, if they Google me, whatever, and they see images of me, this is what they see. Congruence. And I'm going to tell you a story about that in just a moment, about why it is so important. The congruence in the way that you speak. If you're on your website and you're speaking in clinical terms, which you should not be unless you're a licensed healthcare provider and you're providing your hypnosis as an extension of your licensed practice, you should not be using medical diagnostic terms and that type of thing. But if they see that on the website and then they meet with you and you're speaking in slang and shortcuts and just really kind of laid back and not clinical at all, those things don't match. So there's the congruence of appearance, and there's the congruence of your message. If I was very professional on my website and I was all woo-wooey, flowing robes, swinging a smudge pot when my client got on a session, they would be like, what the hell have I gotten into here? What the hell have I gotten into? I didn't sign up for the spiritual stuff, but if you go through my stuff, you know they talk about apprenticing with a shaman, and I don't swing smudge pots. Maybe between sessions, but not with the client. I meet people where they are, but people know that there is a spiritual current that runs through what I do. And some of my clients are into that spiritual aspect and some not so much, and I meet them where they are. And that comes through in my messaging on the website, and it comes through in my messaging on social media. So congruence in your messaging. There needs to be congruence in your background when they show up on the call, if it's virtual, or there needs to be congruence when they show up at your office. Here's where I'm going to tell you a story that has happened back in 2014. I happened to be here in Mississippi. My office was in Connecticut, and I happened to get a phone call to my to the office. So I returned the call, and it was a woman who was extremely needle phobic. And it was on my website that I was a nurse anesthetist, and I worked with people for surgery preparation and that type of thing. That's what I did back then. She was having to have a knee replacement, and she was going to have IVs to go to sleep for anesthesia. And she was freaking out. Unfortunately, I wasn't going to be in town. I was taking care of family matters here in Mississippi, and I was telling her, where to search to find someone who could help her. And she said, well, I've already went to see one person, and I just couldn't go into hypnosis. I couldn't go into hypnosis. I couldn't relax. I couldn't do it. And after 45 minutes of him trying to get me in hypnosis, I just opened my eyes and said, we're done. I can't do this. And I walked out. So I asked her, can you tell me what happened? This is something you'll want to do with every client. Have you ever experienced hypnosis before? Tell me about that hypnosis experience. Now, you don't want that to know about the hypnosis experience so you can critique or judge the other hypnotist. You want to understand the client's expectations around that hypnosis session, whether or not they felt it was positive, and if it wasn't positive, why is that? Why do you think it wasn't positive? Like, what wasn't right for you? Because it helps you. You can't read a person's mind. It helps you to avoid doing something that's going to trigger that past memory, or you can do education around it. So I asked her what happened, and this was a therapist in Glastonbury, Connecticut, who also happened to do hypnosis, and this was many years ago, and this person's probably long since retired. I don't even know their name, and there are a lot of hypnotists in Connecticut. She booked the session. Her husband took her. She has a little bit of nervousness being places, so her husband stayed in the vehicle in the driveway while she went inside, and this hypnotist and therapist had their office inside their home. And she said that when she walked into the home, it was like walking through an OCD person's version of hoarders. There were boxes stacked everywhere. There were magazines stacked. And he took her into this little office where it was very cluttered and crowded, and had her sitting in a straight back chair. And she was so freaked out because she had no idea what she was walking into. This lack of congruence created a lack of safety. Okay. She was expecting to go into a professional's office. And, he told her he was moving or whatever, but first time she ever met this person, we're having to build trust with this congruence. It's the name of the game, is trust, matching, mirroring, pacing. All of this goes in. So the environment has to be congruent. The other thing is, and you could say that this goes under congruence, it can also go under the next one, and that is listening. Listening to what the person is saying. They're wanting someone who's going to be present with them. And most people who come to a hypnotist, they've tried everything else. And especially for people who've been interfacing with the healthcare system, they have people talking at them. They have people debating them. They have people countering everything that they say and exerting their expertise over what the person knows about themselves. If you want to have a successful hypnosis session, you need to listen to what the person is saying anyway. But to be in a place, you're here to be someone who wants to help. And helping means listening. You can't help without listening to understand the problem. And that's what they're expecting, someone to listen to them, to understand, so they can help them. And that is congruence. So keep in mind that everything that you do matters. You don't have to obsess about it. Just be consistent, because other wise people will feel that a fast one has been pulled on them. And I've been in the online marketing space since 2019. And you may not be online except to be on YouTube and in some Facebook groups to, educate yourself, stay up on the trends. You may not work virtually. You may not do online courses and memberships and that kind of thing. But a lot of people have purchased from what they've seen on Facebook, Instagram, all the places. And savvy marketing and fast speech, neuropersuasive language, hypnotic language, and they buy things and their expectations are really high, and what's been sold to them, the person cannot deliver. So there's a huge lack of trust. It's a huge lack of trust in coaching, hypnosis, course creators, you name it. So this is your opportunity to build that trust. Now, let's look at the second thing, and that is a lack of safety. Now, I mentioned the congruence Congruence leads into fear, especially the example I gave of the woman that walked into the hypnotist home office, and there's all these boxes of stuff, and it's not professional at all. And he was wearing a plaid shirt and khaki shorts, and he was in a suit and tie on the website, and all of that stuff. So it puts our guard up. Our little reticular activating system activates our guard dog. So the number one place under lack of safety that we have to address, and we are the experts in this, and this is giving a very thorough and accurate hypnosis pre-talk. We have to do that. The initial hypnosis pre-talk that I was taught all the things about hypnosis. That it's imagination, and it's focused attention, and there's no mind control, and stage hypnosis, people are volunteering for that, but it wasn't it wasn't given to me in a thorough presentation. It was given to me in terms of lots of explanations of what hypnosis is or isn't, which means that you could end up inadvertently leaving things out, not covering things that might be there. An inadequate pre-talk is the number one reason that a client will not go into hypnosis. They will not follow your lead. They will not be compliant in following instructions. And compliance, I'm not talking about control. I'm talking about the willingness to follow instructions, to go with what you're saying. You've got to have that thorough hypnosis pre-talk. And if you begin a hypnotic induction and the client is, really restless, they're seeming like they're not being compliant, just pause and say, you know what? I think I might have forgotten something here, but I train my students to do something different. And this is something that I learned when I trained in 5-Path, and it absolutely is a game changer. Let me swap markers right quick. Running out of ink. Here, I want you to be able to see this. And that is to do a test or an assessment for the readiness of hypnosis. And that assessment for readiness of hypnosis is going to clue you in if there's more work to be done here before you ever start a hypnotic induction. It's going to take care of that, and then you don't end up in the situation where you started the induction and you're getting the feeling that it's not working, and you're pulling out your bag of tricks, and you're hoping and praying that the client goes into hypnosis and believes that they were in hypnosis. We want to avoid all of that because we want them to have confidence in us. Their confidence in us, their confidence in the process, and their confidence to do it well is the recipe for success. And every time you can give them something that increases that confidence in their ability to do it and our ability to listen to them and to help them, you decrease this resistance that we've been talking about. So you're going to do this pre-talk, and then you're going to assess readiness. And if they don't pass the assessment for readiness of hypnosis, then there's more pre-talk to do. And as a hypnotist, you don't ever put this on the client. You don't say, well, geez, what are you afraid of? I've explained all this. What are you afraid of? What else are you afraid of? What can I tell you? Say, you know what? I feel like there's something I may have forgotten to mention here. Can you think of anything that you might have questions about that I forgot to mention? You own it. Because if we make them feel like they've done something wrong or they missed something, that lack of belief in themselves goes up, i.e. resistance. So we definitely want to assess readiness to go into hypnosis so that you know that they're there. Don't start hypnosis until you know they're ready. Just don't start it. This takes as long as it takes. Now, here's another reason people will have a lack of safety and this is their own past traumatic experiences or their own past hypnosis experiences. If I had $1 for every time somebody told me a hypnotist told them they were low hypnotizable and they couldn't be hypnotized, and we did hypnosis and got results right out of the gate, my bank account would be full. And that's not to say anything bad about the hypnotist. It goes back to being trained that there are resistant clients, that there are people who aren't suggestible, and not being taught this process of self-reflection and going back through your checklist and saying, okay, was there something I skipped over here? Was there something I didn't go deep enough on? Did I rush through the process because I was looking at the clock? What was going on there, right? So it's easy for us to fall back that people aren't hypnotizable. There are people out there that say, 1 to 2 people out of every 400 can't be hypnotized. If someone feels safe, if their subconscious feels safe, if they can follow instructions, they can go into hypnosis because they're of average intelligence. I've had one client that was easily hypnotizable, but I could never get him deep enough that I felt comfortable doing glove analgesia with him. He was a pain patient, but he had wiped out on a motorcycle, crushed the entire left side of his body, had 2 heart attacks and a stroke in the ICU, and he had a head injury. So there was something within his brain. We did a lot of work together, and he had really great results. I was never able to do glove analgesia because I was never able to get him to pass that covert test of the threshold of somnambulism and deepen him below that. So there are people who legitimately have something organically happening to the brain. They've had a brain injury, they've had a stroke, something of that nature that will impede that. But on the flip side of that, I had someone reach out to me for a consult who had been on sleeping pills for over 20 years, and it was affecting their cognition. And this person was in a pretty big entrepreneurial endeavor and a potential $1 billion company. That it doesn't mean he was a billionaire. Okay, let's just get that clear. But he was on the cutting edge of something, and I've never followed up to see where he is now, but he's working to build this company so he can then sell it. And he wanted to be able to sleep without sleeping pills. And he had been to see a hypnotist who was also a stage hypnotist, very well known where he lived. And this person tried to hypnotize him several times, told him he couldn't be hypnotized. And he's like, I really want to do this. And somebody told me that you're really, really good and you have healthcare background. So he and I chatted about all the things that could have contributed to what he was experiencing. And he had had EEGs post-head trauma. He had also been in a motorcycle accident. He had had EEGs post-head trauma and sleep studies, and they showed that his brain would not enter REM sleep. I said, well, that may be true enough, but hypnosis isn't sleep. However, hypnosis can get you to that threshold where your mind can at least go into those lighter states of sleep if it doesn't go into REM sleep. I said, but before I work with you, or before I even tell you that I can work with you, I want to know that you're going to be able to be hypnotized. I said, would you allow me right now? And I had no pre-talk. I want to emphasize, I had no pre-talk. I had listened to him. He had tried hypnosis before, and he was in a position he felt safe. I just said, I would really like to just take you through a hypnotic induction and see how you respond before I tell you I can help you, because I just want to, have an understanding of what's happening. He goes, sure, great. Should I lay down? I said, do whatever you want to get comfortable. And I used the same standard induction I used with every client. I did an assessment for readiness, and I used the same standard induction, and that gentleman was in somnambulism under 5 minutes. And I just gave him the suggestion that he could mentally return to this deeply relaxed state anytime he wanted when he closed his eyes to go to bed at night. And I emerged him, and he opened his eyes and he said, oh my God, I have not been able to feel that without drugs for years. So a lot of times when we don't understand, we can give someone the suggestion they're not hypnotizable when they are. We just don't have whatever it is that they need. And see, I had healthcare training, I had healthcare background, and I honestly believe that my conversation with him and speaking from that healthcare perspective and talking about all the things that could have contributed to his brain's lack of ability to feel safe to sleep aided me in that process. So it's not that the hypnotist wasn't any good, and it's not that the client was resistant or not hypnotizable. It was a mismatch of skills to the problem. And there's nothing wrong with telling someone, you know what? I absolutely believe hypnosis can help you, but I'm not sure I'm the right person for you because I believe you would benefit from a deeper skill set or a different skill set. You can say that. People will respect you. They will send you referrals. It's like, oh my gosh, it was amazing. They didn't just want to take my money. They actually found somebody else to help me. Traumatic experiences. Clients can have had traumatic experiences where they had a loss of control. And you really have to go back and revisit that they're in control. They can open their eyes. They can stop the hypnosis. Reinforce that you're there to support them. The mind still may not be ready to let go there. So with these clients, you may not be able to dive into the deep end of the pool in the first session. You might have to say, you know what, this first session, it's going to be here to let your mind to know that you're safe here, that you can do this, and that I am going to shepherd you along this path and help you. The other option here, if they have a lot of traumatic experience, is if you know conversational hypnosis, rather than doing a formal hypnosis, do conversational hypnosis first for a first session. But you got to let the client know what you're doing. Say, hey, I do formal hypnosis sessions, but I'm thinking what you're really going to benefit from today is let's do a conversational session. And what this is it's going to be the weirdest conversation you ever had. You may not even feel like you ever went into hypnosis, but I'm going to be following your subconscious and help you to get enough of a shift that your mind, your brain becomes more comfortable with positive things you're going to be doing in your life. So those things can create a lack of sense of safety, and it has nothing to do with the pre-talk. Nothing to do with the pre-talk. And in my experience, letting the client know that you understand, especially with the trauma, you understand, and that anytime if they were to get emotional or if it's too much, all they have to do is let you know and you'll stop. That is usually enough. And you can't push. I use a rapid induction that has a covert test for somnambulism. And for people who have control issues from trauma, it takes longer, and you just have to be patient, and you can't be tied to this expectation that they have to be in hypnosis in a certain amount of time in a certain way, and that it has to look like a certain thing, because your expectations put pressure on you that energetically now transfer to the client. They don't realize it's happening. You don't realize it's happening. And it is going to impact the experience. Because let's face it, no matter how good you are at something, if you get a string of really challenging clients dealing with a lot of issues and it's not easy, you're going to ask yourself, wow, gee, am I missing something? Do I need to revisit this so that I can do a better job? So even though we know we're doing a good job, sometimes we can still doubt ourselves. The third thing that can create resistance, and if you're doing conversational hypnosis, this does not apply. This is for formal hypnosis sessions with induction, is lack of understanding. What do I mean by that? lack of understanding your instructions. So if their mind is wandering, all these things, if they're people pleasers, if they're control, if they're ADHD, if they're telling me that, my mind wanders all the time, my mind races, in my induction, I will win statements. And if your mind begins to wander, that's okay. It's normal. It's natural. It happens. Bring it back to the sound of my voice. But they simply may not understand the instructions. So in the induction I use, there's a part of the induction that is a looping induction, where the client will say, deeper, relaxed, and then I will say, relaxing more and more, fading away to nothing, nothing, nothing. Now, in the instructions that I give them before that, I tell them when they say those words, they're going to say them softly, slowly, and use half the amount of effort with each repetition. And when they do that, they can become so mentally relaxed that those words fade away and they simply forget about them. Well, their mind may be wandering in that instruction, or they may not understand it. Some people are nervous when they come in and they process more, they need more simple instructions. So there's a lack of understanding of the instructions. If you have someone that you feel isn't following your instructions very well, or you have to repeat yourself, or they process slowly, they're really soaking it in, processing slowly. If there are instructions in your induction that you're asking them to follow you, practice before you begin the induction. And I teach all of my students to do this, even with their initial clients, to get in the habit of practicing this with the client on the first session. And then as they become more experienced and they can tell who follows easily and who doesn't follow those instructions easily, then they can use it selectively. But here's the thing. If you have someone that you think may lack that understanding or that ability to easily follow instructions, because it's simple, but for some people, it's not that straightforward, because their mind may have been wandering in the moment you gave the instruction, then you can practice with them. And practicing with them, the beauty of it is you've done your assessment for readiness of hypnosis and say, okay, we're going to start the hypnosis in a minute. But first, I would like to practice this part. And by practicing having them lose the words, they don't even know you're doing a hypnotic induction, because that is the hypnotic induction in the rapid induction that I use. That's the actual induction part. Everything before that is compliance. But that is enough that people will drop deep into hypnosis for people who are high hypnotizables. You have them practice several times, deep, relaxed, until they've lost those words. And then you say, great, open your eyes. That was wonderful. Let's practice it one more time. They're already in hypnosis. Now you're praising them. You have them do it again. They're going even deeper into hypnosis, because if you haven't emerged them, you're doing something called compounding inductions. And you just keep praising them. Great, that was perfect. Okay, now we're going to begin. So just whenever you're ready, take a nice deep breath in, let it out, close your eyes, begin to relax. And then you begin your formal induction. And then that induction compounds what you've done. So that is compounding of induction. So you can practice. You can practice part of the induction. So for example, when I initially trained, because let's connect this to other techniques other than just rapid induction, which I go rapid inductions all the way. There's no point in spending 10, 15, 20 minutes on an induction. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of the client's time. It's a waste of the client's money. But I initially trained with Ron Esslinger, and he had a version of the progressive muscle relaxation induction that had eye movement and a little bit of confusion built in. So you could practice before you started with a client. Say, hey, in just a moment, we're going to get started with hypnosis. And what I want you to do right now is just close your eyes. Great. Now, with your eyes closed, I want you to pretend you're drawing the number 9 on the back of your eyelids. Just move your eyes so that with your eyes, you're drawing the number 9 on the back of your eyelids. Good. Now do number 8. Because that was part of the instructions in the induction. So you're praising them and they're, yeah, I can do this. I can do this. So the other reason they will have resistance is lack of clear communication. And that is when we, in a moment, we misspeak our directions in the hypnotic induction. We say it backwards and that kind of thing, and just simply restate your instructions. Simply restate your instructions. But the other thing is clear communication about what your process looks like, whether you're doing conversational, you're doing a directed hypnosis. Clear communication around what they can expect in the session is going to help decrease resistance. In other words, it's going to increase their sense of safety in the process. Drop your comments below, ask your questions, and please be sure to like this video, save it, and subscribe. And I'll see you in the next one.